Your financial support for trusted news makes a real difference in your community. It helps Michigan Public deliver the vital, independent journalism our state depends on. You play a vital role as a listener, and we're asking you to join others in funding this critical public service. Together, we can ensure that trusted news not only survives, but thrives for everyone in Michigan. Make your gift today at michiganpublic.org/donate.
From Michigan Public, this is It's Just Politics. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Today, a timely conversation about civility in politics. Can we ever get there?
Right now, when we meet somebody and they tell us they're a Republican or a Democrat or a conservative or a liberal, we draw all kinds of conclusions about what that means about who they are and what they believe.
That's coming up. But first, another Republican has joined the race for governor.
Tom Leonard announced this week that he is running for the state's top seat in 2026.
Leonard is a former Speaker of the Michigan House, former candidate for State Attorney General, and is currently a lawyer and lobbyist at the firm Plunkett Cooney. He joins us now. Speaker, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
First obvious question, why are you running?
And the answer is very simple. I've got three reasons. And those are Hannah, Thomas, and Danny. That's my 8-year-old, my 5-year-old, and my 11-month-old. And Rick, when you look at the state of the state right now, the first two decades of this century, West Virginia was the only state that was worse in terms of population growth than we were. And I believe that policies matter. And the last thing I want to see 10 years from now when my little girl graduates high school is for her to come home and tell me, Dad, I've got to leave the state for better opportunity. I want to make certain that we create the best state to keep our kids here. That's why I'm doing this.
What do you think the biggest singular issue is facing Michigan?
Well, I don't think there's any one silver bullet. I think there are several things we need to do, and that's what I've done with my policy plan. But very quickly, we need to make Michigan more affordable. So, we need to do something on tax reform, not just income tax and lowering the income tax. We got to lower property taxes. As I travel the state, there are people that are terrified they're not going to be able to stay in their homes. That's number one. Number two, empowering workers. We need to bring back right to work, but also licensure reform. If somebody is certified to work in another state, they ought to be able to come here and get a job without having to go through a bunch of hoops. But, a couple other big things that we're focused on right now. Mental health reform. We've got a mental health crisis in this state and across the country. 20% of our citizens suffer from some type of mental health issue, and half of them are not getting treatment. We've got a third grade reading crisis where less than 40% of our third graders can read at proficient level. So there's a lot of things we need to do, and it's time to get to work.
Speaker, I've heard some say that this gubernatorial election in 2026 is going to be the education election. Do you have a policy agenda when it comes to boosting kids here in the state?
Yes. When you look at third grade reading scores, I believe that is the foundation of where we need to start. And we really need to focus in on and put our efforts. And I think you look no further than the Mississippi miracle. This is a state, Mississippi, as you know, one of the poorest states in the union. They spend less on education than most states across the country. 10 years ago, they were 49th out of 50 for reading scores. They put the right policies in place, and now they are in the top 10. So earlier assessments, targeted support with the right counselors in the classroom. Zoe, we are already doing universal pre-K. Why don't we make certain that universal pre-K is focused on preparing these kids to read? But last, we've got to have parental involvement and empower parents. There's got to be clear communication with these parents. They got to have the resources necessary. If Mississippi did it, we can do it. And what I said about this third grade reading crisis is this. I was a former prosecutor. I had to prosecute people that had dropped out of school. If kids can't read, you're essentially creating a pipeline to a welfare check or a prison cell. We cannot do that. We've got to solve this third grade reading crisis.
Speaker, another issue top of mind in Lansing is road funding. This continues to be a conversation in Michigan. Some of the reason we're in this position is because legislatures of the past did not properly fund the roads, at least according to what reports say is needed to keep them in good repair. Do you have a plan for Michigan road funding?
And probably one of the biggest or toughest issues to resolve in Lansing, I would say very briefly this. The $1 billion a year that's collected on the sales tax at the pump that doesn't go to roads, we need tax reform that's going to dedicate that $1 billion every year to fixing our roads. Number two, we've got to do something about regulatory reform. We've got this NIMBY issue with this aggregate issue where aggregates and mining companies cannot, they're having difficulty going into local communities in mining for the appropriate aggregate to fix our roads. That's costing us, some studies have said, near $1 billion per year in costs. We've got to fix that. And then third, in 2023, this state appropriated $4.3 billion in corporate welfare to select companies. Let's get rid of that. Let's do economic development for all of us, and let's fix our roads with that money.
We're speaking with former Michigan Speaker of the House, Tom Leonard, who announced this week that he's running for governor.
Let's talk about the politics of this race. You are entering a really crowded field. Already running just on the Republican side are Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt, former Michigan Attorney General Mike Cox, and Congressman John James. More may join. What is your lane in this primary? What distinguishes you in this field?
What we're going to do, Rick, is we're going to take the Dan Cantwell approach, and that is going to be a positive vision. I've told people when the Lions hired Dan Cantwell, and he took that podium at that first press conference, he didn't focus on 2 or 3 decades of failure. He said, we're going to get to work with a lot of grit. We're going to bring a positive message every day and put together the right team. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to fight grievances of the past. We're going to look forward to fix problems. And as I've been traveling the state and I listen to people, they want a positive vision. The second thing I would say is when you look at my past history, I was the speaker on the conservative side of things, working with a great team together that passed a bill to make English the official language of Michigan. And we also passed constitutional carry reform. But on the flip side, I was also the speaker, again, working with a great team. We passed FOIA reform to open up the executive to FOIA, but also got rid of driver responsibility fees to give 350,000 people across the state their driver's licenses back. I believe that's going to be a message that's going to resonate with everybody across the state, fixing problems.
Finally, Speaker, Republicans at a party convention chose you to run as Attorney General in 2018. You lost closely to current Attorney General Dana Nessel in the general election. You ran again in 2022, but lost your party's nomination again at a GOP convention. Can you win a Republican primary in today's Republican Party?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's going to take a lot of hard work with the right message. And when you look at that 2018 election, we outperformed the top of the ticket by 7 points. We won 6 counties that no other candidate won. I was the only candidate that year to win Macomb, Kent, Saginaw, Eaton, Isabella, and Leland, all counties, all bellwether counties. So we're going to have a great message that I believe our candidacy will be the most electable in November. We just got to go out there and get that message out.
That is Tom Leonard, former Republican Speaker of the State House, who announced this week he is running for governor. Speaker, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
And you can hear more conversations with candidates running for governor, Republicans, Democrats, and an independent. That's at the website, michiganpublic.org/itsjustpolitics. Civility. It feels in short supply in the United States as we experience arguments, gridlock, and actual violence.
This past weekend, we saw politically motivated assassinations and attempted assassinations of lawmakers and their spouses in Minnesota. The alleged assassin, we're told, had a list of targets, and some Michigan politicians were on that list.
It felt like a time to listen back to my conversation with Stephen Henderson and Nolan Finley.
They wrote a book about civility, politics, and how people who disagree can talk to each other and even be friends. You spoke to them, Zoe, before the Minnesota shootings, but it seems no less relevant in this moment.
Stephen, a progressive, met Nolan, a conservative, nearly 2 decades ago. Stephen was then the editorial page editor at the Detroit Free Press, and Nolan held the same position at the Detroit News.
With very different political vantage points, people might think they have a lot to disagree about, which they do. But decades from their first meeting, Stephen and Nolan are not only the closest of friends, but also the authors of a new book. It is called The Civility Book, a guide to building bridges across the political divide.
I started by asking Nolan what it means to have a book about civility come out right now, in what feels like a very uncivil moment.
Well, we've been doing this for a number of years, and every year we think, we say to ourselves, gosh, we need this year more than ever. And, I would think that's absolutely true in 2025 as we continue to slide into this great divide we have as a nation, and we're becoming much more entrenched in our positions and much less willing to discuss issues, politics, what have you, productively with people who don't agree with us.
And it's not just that folks are wary of doing it. Stephen, you actually write in the book that there are some who are actually just fearful of having these kinds of conversations right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you spend any time on social media, if you watch cable news, the 24-hour cable news stations, fear is the thing that kind of hangs in the air over a lot of this, that people feel like they'll be attacked. They feel like they'll be belittled. In some extreme cases, people have been, doxxed or these other kinds of things all over politics. And look, politics has always been, a contact sport in this country, and there's nothing wrong with that. People are passionate; they should be, but there have to be, some guardrails. There have to be some ground rules that allow us to get to that exchange of ideas, which I think sits at the heart of the democratic experiment. If we can't exchange ideas with each other, it's really hard to manage the country, but it's also hard to perfect the country. That wonderful phrase that is in the preamble of the Constitution about a more perfect union.
So the book is not just about the need for civility. It's also a sort of how-to guide of sorts. Nolan, I'd like to think that most folks don't wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to just be really, really mad today. Who can I be really rude and angry to? But they may wake up not completely sure how to go about modeling some of the behavior that you and Stephen have tried to model with one another over the many, many years. Tell me what this looks like for you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, so they may not wake up that way, but are wanting to be that way, but they certainly, too many of them are waking up that way. And this book, the Civility Book, is about our experiences together. I mean, we are not two people who, in today's world, should be friends or as close as we've become over these last 17, 18 years we've been working together. I mean, we don't agree on anything, and we have some very passionate disagreements. But we've learned to have those disagreements and extract some value from them without destroying our friendship. In fact, our friendship has only become stronger. And what we do in this book is offer a whole series of tips and share our own experiences and those of others on how you do this.
Stephen, give me an example of some of these approaches.
We start with this idea of dropping assumptions. Right now, when we meet somebody and they tell us they're a Republican or a Democrat or a conservative or a liberal, we draw all kinds of conclusions about what that means, about who they are, and what they believe. We ask people to hold off on that. Let that person tell you who they are, what they believe, and why. We talk about setting reasonable expectations when we're having these conversations with people we disagree with. I think a lot of times right now people want to beat the other person into the ground, right? Show them how wrong they are. Instead, we talk about trying to extract value from the differences in the way we think and feel, and not think about winning or losing the conversation. We talk about listening, investing in the other person's ideas, and we talk about the fact that we've been at this for 18 years, and neither one of us has ever gotten up from one of these arguments and said, you know what, that's it, I'm done with this guy. I think the intentionality of that is one of the things that's really required to say, a lot of times there's hurt feelings between us. A lot of times there's anger. There have been times when we've stopped, recording an argument and not spoken to each other for a couple of weeks. That's okay. But saying I'm done with this person because I don't like what they say is how we've gotten to where we are. And so you've got to make that decision that it's worth having this relationship and the ability to exchange those ideas, even under the most uncomfortable circumstances.
Well, I want to grab onto that. You talk about this relationship that you two have had for nearly 2 decades. Nolan, the work regarding civility isn't just needed right now in close relationships. It feels urgent for society. I mean, you talk in the book, Stephen, about some hard conversations you've had with family members, but what about conversations with folks that you don't have this kind of deep-rooted history with? What's the first step to take?
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, Steve and I, of course, didn't start out close. When we first met each other, we had a lot of learning to do. But, we offer a couple of truisms that I think help people take the first step and sort of put these conversations in the right context, in a civil context. First thing we say is that all good people come to their opinions in the same way. They take the information, the data available, they run it through the filters of their own experiences and their own personal values, and they come up with a viewpoint. If it's different than yours, it doesn't make them evil. It simply means they've lived a different life and they've had different experiences, different values. It's important to find out, to learn what those experiences and values are before you sit down and start to engage. It leads to a lot more respectful interaction. The other thing we say is that a conversation is not a competition. And so if you're sitting down with the goal of converting someone, give it up. I mean, nobody enjoys that, and it's not really possible. We've been at this for a long, long time. I've never converted Steve to my way of thinking on hardly anything. And so we ask people to to set a more honest goal for a conversation, and that is to learn from each other, to understand each other a little better.
That is Nolan Finley. He was joined by Stephen Henderson. Together, they are the authors of the Civility book, a guide to building bridges across the political divide. Nolan is the editorial page editor at the Detroit News. Stephen is the host of American Black Journal on Detroit PBS and executive advisor at Bridge Detroit. And that is It's Just Politics for today. I am Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Let's talk again next week.